The news broke just after dawn as the first rays of sunlight crept over the Capitol, painting the White House in a pale, uncertain glow. Urgent alerts flashed across the secure terminal on the Resolute desk, bathing the room in a cold blue light. The air in the Oval Office crackled with tension, thick with anticipation and the weight of history. President Donald J. Trump leaned forward, eyes narrowed on the headline from Beijing, his jaw set in determination. China had slapped a staggering 125% tariff on all American-made automobiles, a move that threatened to cripple a cornerstone of the U.S. economy. Silence hung for a moment, heavy and suffocating, then a presidential roar shook the room, breaking the stillness like thunder. Aides outside flinched. This was no ordinary policy spat, it was a direct challenge to American power and prestige. Trump slammed his hand on the desk, scattering briefing papers in every direction, his frustration impossible to contain. "They wouldn't dare!" he bellowed, his fury echoing off the historic walls, rattling the portraits of presidents past. This was personal, a calculated insult to his America First agenda and a direct attack on U.S. manufacturing, the very heart of his political promise. In Trump's mind, China was calling his bluff, daring him to respond, demanding an immediate, overwhelming answer. He grabbed his phone, firing off furious messages and summoning his top trade advisors, his thumbs moving with urgency and purpose. There was no room for debate. He wanted action, now. Every second counted, and hesitation was not an option. The White House scrambled, the calm of morning shattered by a brewing storm, as staffers raced to respond to the crisis. The trade war, long simmering beneath the surface, was about to explode into open conflict, threatening global markets. For Trump, this was a test of legacy. He'd promised to stand up to China, to protect American jobs, and now they were pushing back harder than ever before. Retaliation had to be swift and severe, a message to Beijing and the world: you do not cross Donald Trump, not without consequences. The early morning quiet of Washington was gone, replaced by the first rumbles of a global economic storm as the world braced for what would come next. To understand the firestorm between Washington and Beijing, we need to look at one of the most powerful tools in international trade: tariffs. But what exactly are tariffs, and why do they matter so much in global politics and economics? A tariff is essentially a tax placed on imported goods, making foreign products more expensive and less competitive compared to local alternatives. This can affect everything from electronics to clothing and even the food we eat. For example, if an American car costs $30,000, a 10% Chinese tariff adds $3,000, raising the price for Chinese buyers. Suddenly, that car isn't such a great deal anymore. Governments use tariffs for several reasons: to protect domestic industries from foreign competition, to raise money for the state, or as a bargaining chip in international disputes. This strategy is known as protectionism. But tariffs are a double-edged sword. They might help save some jobs in certain industries, but they also raise prices for everyone, making everyday goods more expensive for families. For instance, if the U.S. puts a tariff on foreign steel, American manufacturers have to pay more for raw materials, and those extra costs are usually passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. So, while a steelworker might keep their job, families end up paying more for cars, appliances, and even canned goods. The impact ripples through the entire economy. When one country imposes tariffs, the other often retaliates, escalating into a trade war, where both sides keep raising barriers and tensions rise. That's what's happening now. The US and China keep raising tariffs, hurting businesses and consumers on both sides, and making it harder for companies to plan for the future. This cycle disrupts global supply chains, slows down production, and creates instability in markets around the world. What starts as a move to protect local jobs can quickly spiral into a much bigger economic conflict, with unpredictable consequences. The result? Higher prices, uncertainty for businesses and families, and no clear winner in sight. Both sides end up paying the price. Tariffs may seem like a simple fix for complex problems, but their impact is far-reaching, affecting millions of people in ways that aren't always obvious at first glance. In today's interconnected global economy, everyone, from factory workers to shoppers, feels the effects of tariffs, no matter where they live. China's 125% tariff was a direct and forceful response to the escalating pressure from the United States. This move was not just a simple policy change, it was a clear signal that China was ready to fight back in the intensifying trade war. The Trump administration had already imposed sweeping tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, aiming to force Beijing to change its trade practices and address long-standing grievances. The U.S. accused China of intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and unfair technology demands, arguing that these practices put American companies at a disadvantage. American tariffs were meant to hurt China's economy, slow its growth, and force Chinese leaders to the negotiating table. The hope was that economic pain would lead to concessions. China's move to target U.S. cars was highly strategic. The auto industry is not just a business, but a symbol of American industrial strength and innovation. A $50,000 American car would now cost over $112,000 in China, thanks to the new tariffs. This price hike effectively shut U.S. automakers out of the world's largest and fastest-growing car market, making American vehicles unaffordable for most Chinese consumers. This wasn't a random decision, it was a calculated move designed to inflict maximum pain on U.S. companies and workers, especially those in the heartland of America's manufacturing sector. The tit-for-tat had escalated rapidly. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods, China's retaliation on American agriculture, and now, a dramatic blow to U.S. cars. Each side was raising the stakes with no sign of backing down. Beijing signaled it was willing to absorb economic pain and disruption in order to resist American pressure, showing a determination to defend its interests at any cost. For U.S. car makers, years of investment, planning, and relationship building in China were wiped out almost overnight, leaving executives scrambling for alternatives. Companies like GM and Ford, which had built factories and established joint ventures in China, now faced a market that was suddenly closed to them, threatening their global strategies. For cars built in the US and exported to China, the business case simply vanished. The cost was too high, and the demand evaporated almost instantly. The Great Wall of Tariffs was more than just a trade barrier, it was a powerful message to the world. This conflict is far from over, and both sides are prepared for a prolonged standoff. The stakes had never been higher, with billions of dollars and countless jobs hanging in the balance. The uncertainty rippled through boardrooms and trading floors worldwide. The world watched anxiously as two economic giants dug in for what looked to be a long, costly, and unpredictable fight, with global consequences. The global auto industry, and millions of jobs connected to it, now hung in the balance, as uncertainty and tension threatened to reshape the future of international trade. Trump's clash with China is part of a broader, aggressive global trade strategy. He uses tariffs as leverage, pushing allies and rivals alike to renegotiate deals on America's terms. The EU, Japan, and others have all faced threats of steep tariffs, especially on cars. Even close allies are forced to the table, risking diplomatic friction. Trump sees trade as a chess game. Every move about gaining advantage for the US supporters call it a long overdue correction. Critics warn it destabilizes the global system. The world is learning under Trump every trade relationship is up for renegotiation. The US-EU trade dispute is a critical front in Trump's global campaign. Trump threatens 25% tariffs on European auto imports, a major blow to the EU economy. The EU readies retaliation, targeting iconic American brands like Harley-Davidson and Levi's. Both sides are locked in tense negotiations. Businesses caught in limbo. European car makers with US factories could be hit by tariffs from both sides. The outcome will shape the global economy. A deal could restore stability, but failure risks a costly new front in the trade war. The world waits as two economic giants face off. The US-Japan trade deal was hailed as a Trump victory. Japan pledged $550 billion in US investment. But beneath the surface, friction remains. The US demands a 90% share of profits, citing the value of its market. Japan resists, wanting a fairer split. This tension reveals the fragility of alliances built on threats rather than trust. Even close partners like Japan find themselves caught between tough US demands and domestic pressures. The deal's future hinges on resolving these disputes. It's a cautionary tale. Even wins can breed new conflicts. The alliance is uneasy, and the world is watching. The trade war's impact is felt on factory floors and in boardrooms across America. For automakers like GM and Ford, tariffs mean higher costs for steel, aluminum, and components. China's 125% tariff decimates a key export market, threatening profits and jobs. Companies face a choice: absorb costs or raise prices. Most raise prices. Beer, coffee, and cars all cost more. Everyday Americans pay the price at the store. Some industries, like U.S. steel, benefit. Tariffs make foreign steel pricier, boosting domestic producers. But for most businesses, the story is uncertainty. Constant tariff threats and retaliation make long-term planning risky. Companies hesitate to invest or hire, unsure what the next 6 months will bring. The result: a divided economy with winners and losers. The only constant is unpredictability. For corporate America, the trade war is a daily challenge. The future remains uncertain. Beyond headlines, ordinary Americans feel the trade war's true cost. Tariffs mean higher prices for families, on everything from TVs to sneakers to groceries. Even US-made goods get pricier as companies pass on higher material costs. For families living paycheck to paycheck, every price hike hurts. The job market feels the strain. Automakers and farmers facing lost exports may cut jobs. Some jobs are protected, but many more are at risk. The consumer bears the burden: higher prices, job uncertainty, and economic stress. The goal is to protect American jobs, but the immediate effect is a higher cost of living. The trade war's chain reaction starts in Washington, but ends at the kitchen table. Millions of families are left to cope with the fallout. China's 125% tariff marks a turning point. Global trade is at a crossroads. The old system of open markets and predictable rules is giving way to confrontation and protectionism. One possible future: a fragmented world, with trade blocs and higher prices. Another: painful negotiations lead to a new, more balanced order. The outcome is uncertain. Businesses and consumers can no longer count on stability. The choices made now will shape the future of global trade. Will this era be remembered as reckless disruption or necessary reset? Only time and world leaders will decide.